This is the luxury world. Get inspired with us today and tomorrow. In the realm of luxury timepieces, few names command the same reverence and aspiration as Rolex. Yet, behind the brand's iconic crown lies a system not of pure prestige and craftsmanship, but of tightly controlled scarcity, strategically curated demand, and a shadowy network of dealers operating within the gray market. In this video brought to you by the luxury world, we will uncover how a hidden network of global dealers, fueled by insatiable demand from China, systematically manipulated Rolex availability and pricing. From backdoor allocations to speculative bubbles, discover how the illusion of scarcity was created, who benefited, and why the system is now unraveling. Please subscribe to Luxury World for exclusive access to upcoming insights, curated content, and expert guidance to help elevate every step of your watch investment journey. For decades, the prevailing narrative sold to the public centered around artisanal production bottlenecks. The belief that highly skilled watchmakers simply could not meet the overwhelming demand became the accepted justification for years-long waitlists and inaccessible models. However, this storyline obscured a more deliberate market strategy. The shortage of available Rolex watches, particularly the most sought-after stainless steel sports models, was not an accident of supply and demand. It was the result of a carefully orchestrated system designed to benefit specific stakeholders, particularly gray market dealers with deep capital reserves and privileged access. The illusion of scarcity functioned as a key driver in the creation of a speculative bubble that saw Rolex prices soar to unprecedented levels. While Rolex indeed produces watches at an impressive scale, estimates suggest around 1.24 million units were manufactured in 2023. These timepieces rarely reach the average consumer. Instead, they flowed through a complex, unregulated channel, the gray market. It is important to note that the gray market differs from the black market. The former deals in authentic, legally obtained products sold through unauthorized dealers. It exists because the authorized retail system is intentionally restrictive, creating conditions in which secondary dealers thrive. The architecture of this manipulation begins with the manufacturer itself. Rolex strategically limits the distribution of its most desirable models, the Submariner, the Daytona, and the GMT Master II. These timepieces are released in small numbers to authorized dealers, who are bound by contract to sell them at retail prices. While these dealers cannot mark up prices, they possess significant leverage through the concept of allocation. Prospective buyers are often told that access to these highly coveted pieces requires relationship building. In practice, this often translates into purchasing multiple fewer desirable models, such as gold or two-tone watches, women's models, or expensive jewelry, before being considered for allocation of the steel sports models. Most consumers are unwilling or unable to participate in this form of high-stakes retail manipulation. However, gray market dealers possess both the financial resources and strategic incentive to do so. By agreeing to purchase large quantities of slow-moving inventory, these dealers effectively solve a dealer's business problem in exchange for the opportunity to acquire a single high-demand model. In many cases, dealers would even accept short-term losses on bundled purchases because the resale value of one sought-after watch, particularly when resold into Asia, could easily offset the deficit and deliver outsized profits. This transactional relationship gave rise to a feedback loop that gradually drained global markets of Rolex's most desirable models. Technically available watches never reached display cases. Instead, they exited through side channels, disappearing into the gray market pipeline. The center of gravity for this system was China. Within the Chinese luxury market, Rolex held a status far beyond that of a timekeeping instrument. It became a symbol of social elevation, influence, and wealth. A widely held saying in China captures this sentiment: the poor play with luxury cars, the rich play with luxury watches. This cultural reverence created extraordinary demand. By 2023, buyers from mainland China accounted for approximately 30% of global Swiss watch purchases. The demand was serviced by an organized and aggressive underground procurement system centered around the practice of daigou, meaning surrogate shopper. These agents operated globally, sourcing watches from authorized dealers across Europe and North America, circumventing steep Chinese import taxes, and reselling to wealthy clients in China. This system turned daigou agents into international operatives with nearly unlimited purchasing power, routinely offering premiums well above retail to acquire specific models. The speculative momentum relied heavily on one region, China, serving as the demand engine. When China's economy began to contract in 2022, the consequences were swift and severe. As consumer confidence faltered and discretionary spending tightened, the appetite for high-end Swiss watches declined sharply. Swiss watch exports to China and Hong Kong plummeted by over 41%, marking a sudden reversal in years of upward momentum. The repercussions echoed across the entire luxury watch ecosystem. The Bloomberg Subdial Index, a metric that tracks the value of the 50 most frequently traded luxury watches, dropped by nearly 37% from its peak. Dealers who had stockpiled inventory at premium prices faced enormous losses as market values corrected. Speculators who had treated timepieces as appreciating assets were suddenly left with depreciating goods. Just as the market correction was unfolding, Rolex faced an even more damaging blow to its brand reputation. In early 2025, a collection of internal documents surfaced on social media, quickly dubbed the China Leak. These documents allegedly revealed Rolex's true production costs, indicating that many models carried profit margins as high as 85% to 90%. The transparency ignited a firestorm of criticism, particularly among Chinese consumers who had been the most aggressive buyers in recent years. The perception of being financially exploited, paying exorbitant premiums for goods that cost a fraction to produce, provoked widespread outrage. The backlash forced an uncharacteristically reactive response from the brand. For the first time in its modern history, Rolex reportedly issued direct price reductions, ranging from 10% to 20%, on certain steel sports models in the Chinese market. These adjustments were intended to placate frustrated consumers and rebuild trust in a key demographic. However, the damage to the brand's aura was done. The core mythos that Rolex was a rare, near unobtainable object forged in limited numbers by artisans had been fundamentally undermined. The speculative fever has broken. Prices for once unattainable models continue to decline, and demand has recalibrated to more sustainable levels. The era in which common steel Rolex models could reliably generate astronomical returns appears to have come to an end. Furthermore, the exposure of these systemic manipulations has permanently altered the perception of Rolex within the luxury landscape. The once unassailable reputation of exclusivity has been punctured by revelations of profit-driven strategies and opaque market behavior. The broader implications extend beyond Rolex. This unmasking has raised questions about the practices of the entire luxury industry. Transparency, ethical pricing, and customer trust are now emerging as critical benchmarks for discerning consumers. While the gray market will continue to operate in some capacity, its influence has been diminished, at least temporarily. The role of China as a driving force in global luxury consumption is also undergoing recalibration, as economic headwinds and increased consumer skepticism reshape spending behavior. Ultimately, the spectacle of empty Rolex display cases will no longer be viewed simply as a consequence of overwhelming demand. They now stand as monuments to a time when scarcity was manufactured, prices were manipulated, and a global supply chain was leveraged to benefit the few at the expense of the many. As the dust settles, the industry must grapple with how to rebuild credibility in an era where information flows freely and consumers are better informed than ever. This chapter in the Rolex saga may be closing, but its legacy will endure. The collapse of the engineered scarcity model offers a cautionary tale, not only for the watch industry, but for any luxury brand that relies too heavily on perception over transparency, and on exclusivity as a tool of control rather than craftsmanship. The world has seen behind the curtain, and what was revealed has changed the narrative forever. What are your thoughts on the luxury timepiece market now that these industry mechanisms have been brought to light? We would love to hear your perspective. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and give the video a thumbs up if you found it insightful. Do not forget to follow Luxury World for more curated content on fine timepieces and market insights. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to welcoming you again in our next video.